Tonight is a British actor, a comedian, and an author. Please welcome Russell Brand.
Russell, you're awesome, man.
He's a very funny, talented guy.
Very good to see you again, Russell.
He's a talented guy, but he turned angry at some point. At some point, some switch flipped in his mind.
He used to be so funny, and now he's just an ass.
I only knew he was like a drug addict, sex addict, loser.
A left-wing commie scum named Russell Brand.
Russell Brand, a D-list actor, better known for his failed marriage to Katy Perry.
He cooks meth and sleeps in his car.
Why is this person brought before a select committee? He simply isn't capable of doing it.
Hello.
If I told you 10 years ago that this guy right here would be the biggest political commentator on YouTube, you'd probably laugh in my face. Back then, Russell Brand was a movie star, husband of Katy Perry, and a recovering heroin addict, famous for his eccentric behaviour.
Now you're a sex addict, is that right?
I don't know if it's right, but it's fun.
His over-the-top confidence.
Well, no.
Work more quietly!
And his rampant promiscuity.
Well, it's been really a wonderful experience. See you later,
Russell.
Alright, take care. Russell, how can I do your bra just like this?
But today, Russell Brand is a family man, truth seeker, and owner of one of the fastest growing political channels on YouTube, with Russell's YouTube growth outcompeting media companies like MSNBC and Fox Media. But how could Russell Brand possibly get to this point? Why did Russell give up the fame, fortune, and Hollywood spotlight to talk about the deep state, lab leaks, vaccine passports, and the Great Reset?
Where you have no power or influence over your own life.
What caused this transformation? It's safe to say that over his life, Russell Brand has certainly gained some valuable insights along the way. Join me as we cover the incredible story of Russell Brand. Our story begins in Essex, early 1990s. The name Russell Brand is far from famous at this point in time. In fact, 16-year-old Russell Brand's life was in a downward spiral. Following a number of school expulsions, sexual abuse from his neighbour, and falling into bulimic eating patterns, things really weren't looking good.
Naughty things would Russell do then?
Just regular naughty stuff like smashing windows, starting fires over the allotments, bunking off school, shoplifting.
Added to the mix was Russell's chaotic family life, his mother suffering from cancer, his father running away, and his stepdad being an all-round abusive man would leave Russell a lonely child.
I was an insecure little fella.
Russell would later claim that his personality was defined by this period of solitude, admitting he never really fitted in as a child. There was really only two things that mattered for Russell: his desire for fame,
And I thought that if I didn't become famous, there was no way that I was going to feel any sense of connection or happiness. I was a nervous little lad.
and his desire for drugs.
I was also studiously and diligently becoming a drug addict. It took quite a lot of commitment, it was quite time consuming. And ultimately these two drives, the drives to entertain and the drives to numb pain, competed in my little biographical journey.
However, Brand was eventually accepted into the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, a prestigious acting school in London. Things seemed to be looking up. Or so it seemed. By the time Russell joined this acting academy, Russell was already a heroin addict. Although in the public eye, Russell was doing extremely well, and by the age of 17, he began working on the British TV show, The Bill.
What do you mean, you know? It's not true. I've got nothing to be afraid of talking to you. You mean you're afraid of someone else?
However, this acting success was short-lived. Unlike Russell's drug problem, it was becoming more and more obvious that Russell could no longer hide his heroin use. When it became apparent that his drug abuse was getting in the way of his acting, he was expelled in his first year of acting school.
And then his final year was kicked out for the second time.
He was asked to leave because it wasn't working. And it was really upsetting because it crushed him.
With only a few acting gigs on the side and an all-consuming drug habit, Russell was losing hope. And so as a final lifeline, Russell would turn to heroin and crack for support.
You were addicted literally to everything.
Yes, I became addicted to heroin, crack cocaine, cocaine without the washing it up to make it into crack, amphetamines, marijuana, alcohol.
Russell Brand had gone from attending one of the top acting schools in the UK to living life in the underworld, scoring heroin and crack from the ghettos of London. He had hit rock bottom. No future, a severed relationship with his family, and completely broke. It didn't look like fame was coming anytime soon.
The last 3 years though with the crack and the heroin were probably the worst. It involved the most times getting arrested, the most time physical injury.
It would take 7 drug-fueled years full of arrests and close calls with death before things would ever change.
being afraid of the fact that you could die.
I remember you saying in 6 months' time you were going to be dead in prison or in a lunatic asylum. Yeah. I remember hearing that and thinking, oh, fucking hell, that sounds heavy.
However, it was in 2000 when things began to turn around for Russell Brand. On the 2nd of February 2000, Russell performed his first stand-up at the Hackney Empire New Act of the Year. Whilst not winning the event, onlookers started to recognise his talent and were convinced of his potential. It was at this exact moment when Russell's career would begin to snowball, but no one could have predicted as to what was coming next.
When it said ladies on the door, I thought it just said, ladies, would you like a lady? Would you like to touch one? Sniff one round the tops of her legs? Wee nearer?
In 2001, Russell Brand briefly worked for MTV as a video journalist, although, like his school days, it wouldn't take long for him to be expelled from the company. Russell's departure came after arriving at work high and dressed as Osama bin Laden just one day after the 9/11 attacks, not to mention he brought his drug dealer to work.
Dressing up as Osama bin Laden on September the 12th, 2001. Of all the choices of fancy dress you could ever choose on such a date, I would actually think that has to be the worst one.
It was becoming clear that with Russell's growing fame was a very serious drug problem.
Oh, wait, you got fired from MTV, right? You were the first person that got fired, I think, from MTV. How did that happen?
When I was a crack and heroin addict, I made some unusual decisions. They included dressing in an inappropriate way on September the 11th. Now, before I talk about this, remember, I was on crack and heroin, Chelsea, and I challenge any of you to take crack and heroin and see how it affects your personal, private and professional life.
However, this was only the start. In 2002, Russell attended the May protest for workers' pay, ostensibly to protest, but really just for another excuse to be smashed on heroin and crack. The brewing concoction of ego-boosting fame, crack and far-left beliefs rendered Russell Brand naked in the middle of London's Piccadilly Circus.
During the 2002 May Day protests, did you strip naked in Piccadilly Circus?
Yeah, that was a mistake. You've got to know, Piers, you must know this for a number of reasons. I was on, remember I was a drug addict. Now, I'm not using it as an excuse for everything, I'm just using it as an excuse for this. I was on a lot of drugs, I wasn't thinking straight, I was showing off. Like, they'd make you go daft, crack, heroin, you make terrible decisions. And I was showing off in the middle of Piccadilly Circus by the Statue of Eros, took my trousers and pants down all in front of the police.
This was the second turning point in Russell's life, with this humiliating scene serving as one of the main catalysts for Russell's eventual recovery. As shortly after this instance, Russell's sobriety was instigated by his agent John Noel, after he was caught using heroin in a bathroom during a Christmas party.
It was your Christmas party and I was using gear in the toilet. I was over the foil and everything. What's that, mate? Oh, fucking hell, is that heroin? Well, you got a bit of a problem, haven't you? Do you know what I mean?
A bit of a roundabout.
A year after going to rehab, Russell was able to land a job presenting on a show called Big Brother's Big Mouth, a sideshow of the UK hit Big Brother.
I believe it were Churchill that goed. It's a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma.
With a new job and newfound sobriety, Russell's path to fame began to soar. His stand-up tours were sellouts, and by 2007, Russell used his experience in comedy to run his own TV show, Ponderland. The show proved to be a huge hit with the viewers, boosting his popularity tremendously. With his show taking off, accolades pouring in, and being crowned Shagger of the Year, it's safe to say that Russell well and truly had his hands filled.
When I met him, he was having sex with 5 or 6 women a day.
It was a conveyor belt of kind of faceless, nameless bodies.
Shagger of the Year.
Yes, one of my proudest accolades is that I am the shagger of some years.
However, it was in 2008 when everything would change for Russell.
Hello there, you little sex object. I've lost a shoe.
In 2008, Russell gained his major breakthrough in the film Forgetting Sarah Marshall, essentially turning the name Russell Brand into a household name, with this newfound fame granting Russell access into the Hollywood elite, getting key roles in films like Despicable Me, Get Into the Greek, The Tempest and Hop.
It's all over the news. Some fella just stole a pyramid. They're saying he makes all other villains look lame.
And in the comedy world, Russell was performing sold-out shows and found himself on his own Comedy Central stand-up special.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Russell Brand.
With his career flying high and his addictions behind him, the final piece of the jigsaw fell into place when he married the love of his life, Katy Perry. Russell's newfound ascension into the Hollywood bubble would be a pivotal point in moulding Russell's political views, because, like anyone in Hollywood, you have to conform.
It's easy if you try.
You always have to say the right things, you have to be as sanitized as possible, and of course, you have to virtue signal.
I think a socialist egalitarian system based on the massive redistribution of wealth, I think the very concept of profit should be hugely reduced. David Cameron says profit isn't a dirty word, I say profit is a filthy word.
With his newfound fame and his presenting experiences, Russell would star in his own late-night talk show, Brand X. The show featured a segment called Totally Unacceptable Opinion, which would feature people from groups like the Westboro Baptist Church who would debate Russell.
Steve Drain and Timothy Phelps of the Westboro Baptist Church is a type of religion. Don't be mean, don't be mean. Which one are you, mate? Steve, sit down, bruv. Which one are you?
Timothy.
Hello, Timothy.
Brand X, however, was cancelled after 2 seasons, although the show was Russell's first exercise on riffing on the news and bringing his political and philosophical arguments to the mainstream. Yet, this life Russell had stumbled on was beginning to take a nasty toll on his psyche. The world of being a Hollywood star, with all its virtue signalling, emptiness and vacuousness, was becoming too toxic. Russell was beginning to realise that the intoxicating world of stardom wasn't a healthy place to be trapped inside.
I thought it would be good to be rich and famous, it would be good to be the opposite of this, it would be good to have stuff, it'd be good to have money, it'd be good to be invited to the party. Well, I've been invited, I've been in, we're having this chat in a private Swish members club in East London. It's super cool, there's bare brick walls, everyone's double good looking. But I've been inside now, I've seen the other side of the looking glass, it ain't fucking worth it. It's not good, it don't feed your soul, I still feel empty inside.
This was the third pivotal moment in Russell's journey. With the dawning realisation that his dreams weren't all they lived up to be, it wouldn't take long for Russell's world to fall apart. After 14 months of marriage, Russell Brand and Katy Perry would divorce. Russell's acting roles began to decline and his presence in the entertainment industry was beginning to nosedive.
You got divorced at the weekend. When I spoke to you last time, you were very happily married and you were talking as if this was going to be it. How do you feel now that you're officially a single man again?
Russell's life of glitz and glamour was falling apart. It quickly became apparent that Russell would need to divorce himself from the Hollywood lifestyle and reevaluate his path. The lifeline sustaining Russell's journey up until now had evaporated. Fame, drugs, one-night stands, all of it meaningless and toxic. There was only one thing left for Russell: politics. But it's important I give some context of the time. In 2011, the world was becoming a very different place. The 2008 financial crash had left a nasty stain on the economy and society.
The stock market is now down 21%.
Because we're now down 43%.
On the NASDAQ, everything and more has been completely wiped out.
It was the worst day on Wall Street since the crash of 1987.
Linked with this was a migrant crisis in Europe and Arab Spring riots in the East.
Reports of explosions.
Clashes between rioters and security forces.
Society was changing and so was Russell, with Russell's obsession with Hollywood and the entertainment industry dwindling. It was time for him to enter the political arena. Following the overdose of long-term friend Amy Winehouse, Russell would begin spreading awareness of drug addiction. Most notably in 2012, Russell Brand testified to the Home Affairs Committee about government drug policy.
To offer them treatment, not simply out of some airy-fairy that's all old hands and hug liberalism, but because it deals with the problem and it prevents further crimes being committed. Addicts that get clean at one day at a time through abstinence-based recovery, generally speaking, stop committing crimes. That's better for victims, it's better for the addict, it's better for society.
The testimony would bring Russell his biggest critic of all, the well-articulated straight-edge, brother of Christopher Hitchens, Peter Hitchens. This divide between Russell and Hitchens would begin to crystallise in the following months, with the issue of drug addiction at the forefront of their tensions.
I'd like to ask the alleged comedian in the hat we've had a lot of him, and far too much for me. Deal with a person who cannot debate seriously. Why is this person brought before select committees and allowed to make programs on the BBC? He simply isn't capable of doing it.
It was becoming clear that Russell's focus was shifting away from acting, stand-up and presenting to campaigning, debates and political writing.
There's money, I've got money now, I've seen rich people, there's plenty of money out there, it's just not being distributed.
Notably, in October 2013, Russell became the guest editor of the left-wing magazine, The New Statesman. He would use his position as editor to dedicate part of the magazine to the notion of revolution. As he wrote in the issue's editorial, imagining the overthrow of the current political system is the only way I can be enthused about politics. Following these statements, Russell would go viral after his interview with Jeremy Paxman.
Jeremy, don't ask me to sit here in an interview with you in a bloody hotel room and devise a global utopian system. I'm merely pointing out that
You're calling for revolution.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you see any hope?
Remember that? Yeah, totally. There's going to be a revolution. It's totally going to happen. I think not only I ain't got a flicker of doubt. This is the end.
In a response to the interview, Russell released his book Revolution in 2014. In the book, Russell argued contemporary capitalism is unequal and unfair. Russell claimed contemporary democracy is a sham, with Russell instead advocating for a social revolution based on two principles. 1. Non-violence, and 2. The radical improvement of the quality of life for ordinary people. However, the book was really just filled with these trite, vague messages of changing the world through love, compassion, and unity, which is why it gained a mixed reception. And to be honest, in this part of Russell's journey, I had a very negative opinion of him. I saw him at the time as another rich celebrity from Hollywood, telling the public that we need to redistribute the wealth, all whilst living in gated mansions and gated communities. And I really wasn't the only one who thought this.
Stand for Parliament. If you're going to campaign, then stand.
I stand for Parliament, but I'd be scared that I'd become one of them. I know what side of the
No, I'm sorry. It's full addiction.
In a 2014 YouGov poll, Russell Brand was chosen as one of the most negative influences on political debate. The poll found that 60% of poll participants disliked him, so shortly afterwards, Russell would appear on BBC Newsnight to renew his popularity. But this would end up making everything worse.
150 years.
Do you ever go
and it's
outside?
terrible. Just look at the right-hand side. I'm on your side here. Look, on the right-hand side. Look how far it goes down.
Sure.
Go back over the previous bits, though.
Don't talk to me like that, mate. It's
Wages have been going up. In the book, you refer to the destruction of the Twin Towers in New York, 9/11, as what some people say looked like a controlled explosion. And one might read that as you giving some credence to conspiracy theories.
You can read the book in whatever manner you would like
to.
Do
you believe that the Twin Towers were destroyed by forces of the American government or similar?
I think it's interesting that at this time where we have so little trust in our political figures, where ordinary people have so little trust in their media, that we have to remain open-minded to any kind of possibility. I don't know. I think you're correct. Do you trust the American government? Do you trust the British government?
Following this, the media would be quick to call Russell a conspiracy theorist, making Russell unpopular on both the right and now the left. But there was one thing that stood out with Russell Brand. He was touching on something unspoken, most notably the pointlessness of voting for unrepresentative leaders.
Which is you don't think people should do it.
Every election in American history has been won by the party that has the most money to campaign with. Every single election. That means don't bother to have the election. Just ask which one of you two's got the most money. The person puts their hand out, go, you could be in charge then. Because that is what happens anyway.
Right.
With an increasing presence in the political sphere, Russell would launch his first YouTube series in 2014.
Hello, welcome to The Truth.
Russell's aim with the channel was to analyse the news and assess the greatest risks to personal freedom. The show propelled his YouTube following, gaining Russell renewed popularity in the political world, most famously for his criticisms of Fox News.
Americans have shed enough blood there. My resolution? Airstrikes. Bomb them. Bomb them, keep bombing them, bomb them again and again.
Fucking hell, Justice Janine. Bomb them. She's pointing everything. Bomb them. When they do these bombings, it creates more insurgents. That's what creates them. Don't think of the bomb as going down there and destroying stuff. Think of it as it's like a seed that goes into the ground and grows insurgents out of it.
The back and forth beef between Fox News anchors and Russell would further polarise Brand from the right.
Well, back to Hannity. All right, yesterday, Russell Brand, a D-list actor, better known for his failed marriage to Katy Perry, recorded himself going on a 12.5-minute tirade against little old me. Russell, if you're watching, and I'm sure you will, take a close look at your TV because I need to educate you because you're kind of dumb and ignorant.
In addition to his news analysis on YouTube, Russell began having guests on the show. However, this YouTube channel was a very different place to what we see today, with the guests and topics really just targeting what didn't fit into the leftist narrative. By the end of the year, more than 200 episodes have been released on the channel, boosting Russell's presence as a leftist political commentator. However, Russell's hypocrisy would emerge again in 2015. having been a strong advocate for not voting.
Russell Brand is one of the people who said in the past that he doesn't think people should bother to vote.
Russell would suddenly change his tune and proclaim to the public that they needed to vote for the Labour Party. All of this came when Brand published an interview with Labour leader Ed Miliband on the Trues.
We know that Ed Miliband, under cover of night, went to see Russell Brand. The Tories have reacted already, and David Cameron has said, Russell Brand is a joke.
Russell Brand's a joke.
And yet, in the 2015 election, Russell was never registered to vote. It was these sorts of hypocrisies that would crush his popularity. And by 2015, in the face of declining public approval, Russell cancelled his YouTube show, where he would release the final episode of The Trues titled Final Episode of The Trues. Goodbye, good luck.
To be continued.
To be continued. We started with a bad pun. We ruined the general election.
Russell Brand's a joke.
We antagonised Fox News.
Scruff bucket, Russell Brand.
We brought about change. We brought new conversations to the table. But we will be ending on a bad pun. To be continued. Don't unsubscribe here. Goodbye for now.
So now the question was, what do you do from here? Having had all the fame, sex, drugs, money, attention, and now facing growing hatred from the public, what was left for Russell Brand? Russell needed a break from the crazy world of politics and entertainment to answer these exact questions. What mattered in his life? Why was Russell losing popularity? How could Russell Brand find out what his true beliefs actually were? So Russell used the time to settle down and put his life in perspective once again, and it was in these years where Russell's journey would change the most, creating the Russell Brand we see today.
I've meditated every day. This is what has happened. I've started doing videos on how I've meditated every day. But more importantly than that, probably, is that my assumption of who I am has been challenged because I have a daily experience of consciousness that is distinct from my individual sense of myself.
Throughout Russell's life, there had always been signs that Russell would delve headfirst into spirituality. From meeting the Dalai Lama,
that's not booze, is it? Not alcohol.
talking about the Hare Krishna movement, and through daily transcendental meditation, it was always a part of Russell. But it was only from coming out of the limelight and re-evaluating his values and political positions would we see a new side to Russell Brand.
I don't look at porn, I don't objectify people, I'm in a monogamous relationship. I know I can't get anything by cheating people, in the sense of like trying to get something from people.
From here, Russell would start a family and move out into the countryside away from the momentum of being in the limelight. Through grounding himself with children, reading, and living away from the facade of entertainment, Russell's mind would begin to open. Rather than just involving himself in heated debates on live television, Russell would instead turn to discussions with figures from all sides of the political equation. And so in 2017, Russell would rejuvenate his YouTube channel and begin his podcast Under the Skin. The podcast's early days would consist of academics and scholars to discuss topics such as, can we really stop terror? Why are you who you are? And Shakespeare and power. But over time, these podcasts would evolve to host a wide range of guests and topics, discussing the culture war with Jordan Peterson, tech power, manipulation and conspiracies with Edward Snowden, and populism with Candace Owens. These experiences showed the other side of the coin to Russell. Russell would still retain his beliefs in the problems of big tech, big government and media manipulation, but his left-right paradigm would dissolve in place of finding truth without partisanship.
In my podcast Under the Skin, I've had guests that are from what you would call the right, guests from what you would call the left, guests with out there views in a sort of a spiritual sense, atheistic and materialistic views, scientists, spiritual folk, because I'm interested in truth.
It was this transformation to a family-centered, curious and calm Russell Brand that would make Russell the fastest growing political commentator on YouTube. However, from 2017 to 2020, most of Russell's channel was focused on spirituality and self-help, with videos on meditating, depression, anxiety, loneliness, relationships and yoga. It was only until late 2020 when Russell would begin to give his opinion on the political world. Having separated from party politics, Russell's perspective was fresh in a world defined by identity politics. The first major sign of this was in December 3rd, 2020, when Russell released a video titled COVID Vaccine, Skepticism or Trust. It was a video that showed the open-minded approach Russell now had to the current political situation we're in today.
New ideas are being leveraged on the basis of public health and safety that certainly seem to have another component due to some of the partners that are involved, notably Pfizer, and at a time where people are concerned as well as about their health, about individual liberty and the impediment on individual liberty imposed by government organisations, aided and abetted by corporations, it seems it's concerning.
With no Hollywood elite moulding his views, no addictions, no public pressure, Russell was able to provide a balanced view on the vaccine, a feat no one in the media or YouTube could ever do, for fears of being cancelled or silenced by big tech or their bosses. The video would eventually blow up, getting 10 times the viewership of Russell's usual videos. And then in 2021, in the aftermath of the Capitol Hill riots, Russell, a man who in the past was quick to call Brexit voters bigots, was now voicing the concerns of Capitol Hill rioters, giving their perspective a chance to be heard in the face of untold scrutiny from the mainstream media, academics and Washington establishment.
What I'm saying is that what is interesting about these disturbances, about this disruption, is that during the last few months we have seen a continuation of increasing inequality. It is likely, given the architecture of the Biden government, that most people, regardless of their colour or their class, will not see significant change in their quality of life. So I suppose my ultimate conclusion is this: if you want to be free of this kind of behaviour, then we have to contribute to the creation of conditions that help us to be free of it.
Russell would continue making these videos, highlighting the deception and Mickey Mouse levels of government control the World Economic Forum proposed.
Davos Week, the Great Reset. You will own nothing and you will be happy. Why do we keep hearing this phrase?
In addition to highlighting the hypocrisy of billionaires promoting lockdowns while secretly buying up untold acres of farming land.
Bill Gates is now the largest farmland owner in the United States. Why has Bill Gates become a kind of tech old McDonald? Let's investigate it and work out, is he simply pursuing a plan to help people, or could there be another explanation?
These videos continue to blow up, gaining millions of views and boosting Russell's presence as a political commentator. From here, Russell would make videos on the vaccine makers' role in the opioid crisis, his experiences with Edward Snowden, protesting COVID laws. He would highlight the dangers of vaccine passports and the blatant hypocrisy of the Biden administration. In a matter of a few short years, Russell had gone from hating and dehumanizing media companies like Fox News to having quite a lot in common with them. From the problems of big tech, the lies behind COVID origins, the ramifications of vaccine passports, and the revolving backdoor between the White House and Wall Street.
Now, when I watch things on Fox, they seem to be talking about things I care about, breaking up big tech.
Today, Amazon, Google, and Facebook, also Apple, aren't just richer and more powerful than the old monopolies or any companies that have ever existed throughout human history.
Ending monopolies.
There's nothing free about this market. A lot of these companies operate as monopolies.
Corruption in government and the relationship between government and big business.
They use government regulation to crush competition.
By finding equilibrium between the left and the right, Russell has now managed to become the fastest growing political commentator on YouTube. And in a way, it seems like Russell was the perfect candidate for this position. Who else has lived through all aspects of society in such an intense way? Who else could go from living in crack houses, to becoming a movie star, to being at the forefront of British politics, to speaking about the deep state on YouTube?
That real power lies with a deep state, inaccessible to democratic process, meaning that there is little point in voting, because whoever you vote for, you get the same deep state.
But it all comes back to the original question of this video. What caused this transformation? Well, from the start, Russell was always looking to experience something real. From being a drug and sex addict, to chasing fame, to becoming a movie star, to being a stand-up comedian, to debating politics, to protesting, campaigning, to wanting a revolution, to finding spirituality, meditation, to calling out the deep state, Russell has had first-hand experience of what he talks about. He has had the opportunity to live on both sides of the coin, as a poor, desperate and lonely man, to being a rich, famous and successful man. He's been in the Hollywood elite, he's dined with the billionaire class and spoken with the media moguls, which is why, unlike so many commentators in the media and YouTube, Russell has lived through what he preaches. Through his first-hand experience, Russell can see what is really important in life. This is why Russell has evolved in a way a lot of commentators haven't. Rather than being imprisoned by conventional expectations set by partisan lines or Hollywood elites, Russell has managed to effortlessly guide himself across the political landscape without jeopardizing his core values. Which is why it seems clear to me that if Russell continues his current path, Russell could ironically be the essential balance between the bitterly divided left and right.